Our guest tonight is a very sweet lady. She is courageous, not only in having the courage to get out of her polygamous marriage, but also to have the courage to get out of the polygamy group that she was born and raised in. She has the courage to appear on this show and tell her story, and that also takes a lot of courage. She was born and raised in the Kingston polygamy group. At one time, her husband had a few wives, and one by one, 3 of his wives left him because of his physical abuse and neglect. Our guest has also suffered physical abuse and other abuses from her polygamist husband, and she's here to tell her story. I would like to welcome and thank Rachel Kingston for coming on the show tonight. Thank you, Rachel, for coming.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. You've got quite a story to tell, and we want to get through as much of it as we can, so let's just get going on it. When did you leave? Made your decision to leave, and when did you leave the Kingston group?
It was probably about August of 2009 that I started making plans to leave, and it was a few months later that I actually did.
That you actually
was able to get out.
But mentally and emotionally you were out quite a bit before that, weren't you?
Yeah, I was.
What about your children? Would you tell our viewers about your children?
Okay. I've had 5 kids, and 2 of them did pass away. I have a little boy that was run over in a driveway by the babysitter. Also, I did have a baby that she only lived for a few days because of numerous health problems, and like with my son, then it was really hard to get through his death because of with my husband and his family and different members in the group. Then they did like the same day that he died, then they actually came into my house and they wanted to go through everything just to make sure that there wasn't any evidence that they were any part of my life or that I was associated with them at all.
Afraid that there would be something made public that would...
And it was kind of interesting because they were really concerned about it being all over the media or having problems, and it just really bothered me because here I suffered a loss, and that wasn't even their concern. They didn't even care about that at all. They were focused about themselves.
Yeah,
so it made it a lot harder.
So you didn't get it. You weren't able to grieve properly as a mother with the sympathy of people around you.
I mean, I was just more expected to just get over it and move on. And anyone who's had a death, and I mean, it's just a really hard thing to get through.
That's a tragedy, losing your child in that way too. But they were just more concerned about protecting their polygamy group than helping you through that emotional. And the little girl, when she died, did they treat you the same way during that time?
It was pretty much the same way. I would have to say more of a harsher treatment. Just I think it was more difficult because it had only been a year since my son had died, and so I think it was more just stacking on and just really hard to get through because I was still grieving, even from before.
From the son.
And one thing that just really sticks out in my mind is we were at the hospital, and just right afterwards, and when my father-in-law came, then he just made a comment just in passing on the thing that usually happens is that it's something that the mother has done during the pregnancy, or that it's their fault because of the deformities or the problems that the baby has. And
it's always the mother's fault.
And we had even met with a group of doctors, and the thing that they really stressed mostly was that it wasn't anyone's fault. It's something that happens. And for the most part, you really don't have a lot of control over that.
Right. But he wanted to pile the guilt upon you that it was your problem, and they didn't have to bear any of the burden of it. But you've got 3 living children.
I do have 3 girls right now. They're ages 7, 6, and 2, and they're just the most amazing kids.
They're darling kids. I agree with that. They're very. What did your husband react when? How did he react when he realized that you really were planning on leaving and that you planned on taking your children with you?
And the thing that had happened is that like you're aware, we had corresponded in helping me to be able to actually get out and leave. And there was one email that I recall that there was any mention of anything specific about the plans. And so it was on a Saturday that I had planned to leave. And the Friday before then, it was my grandparents who were watching my kids, and they wanted to leave early, so I was going to come early to pick them up. And when I got there, no one was home. They had already left on their trip, and they told me that their dad had already picked them up. And I was just really frustrated because he never was the one that picked them up, and so I was, I guess, shattered and just really surprised. And when I did try and contact him, then he actually didn't even answer his phone, which most of the time he did answer the phone when I called. And so I was just really more worried because I was planning to leave and I didn't know what he was aware of or what he wasn't. I mean, and so it was actually kind of interesting because not long after I tried to get a hold of him, I got a phone call from an attorney's office telling me that there was a restraining order filed against me, and I was just in shock and just really scared to death. I didn't quite know what to do, and he wouldn't even give me any information. And so the thing that just really caught me off guard was the fact that it was a Friday, it was almost the end of the day, and knowing that the courthouse, I could only get through until 5 o'clock. It was just right before that, and even attempting to get through, then I mean, it took quite a while, and it was nearly 5 o'clock before I got through and was able to get just a few details about what was going on, and even then, that wasn't even much. And shortly after that, maybe around 5:30 or so, then I got a call from him, and he said, the judge's clerk wants to talk to you. And so they basically told me, we want to meet with you tonight at the courtroom. Can you come? And so I did rush over there, and I didn't quite know what to expect. When I went there, then he was there, along with some members of his family, also some of my neighbors from the apartment building I lived in. And I was just so shocked, so upset, and I just didn't know what to think. And the only thing that was really, they talked about how I was trying to hide the kids, and so they basically, the outcome from court was just, you can't hide the kids, you can't take them out of state.
But how did he know that you were making any plans for that at all?
And that I don't even know anything beyond the email.
Just the email?
Any other way that he could possibly have known at all.
So do you think that they hacked into your email account?
I think it's very possible. I mean, he does have family, and there are other people that are very knowledgeable about computers and different things like that, it's very possible.
So he was watching with that. So your plans to get out as they had been made didn't happen, but your choice to leave was made public at that point. They knew that you wanted to leave at that point.
Right.
Well, let's go back to your life, your domestic and economic challenges while you were in the polygamy group. What about the apartment you lived in? Would you like to tell our viewers the beauty of the apartment that you was in?
The thing that had happened is the previous apartment we had lived in, then we were told that we had to move out because they were going to condemn the apartment, and so we did decide to move to a different apartment that was owned by the group. And I guess we kind of talked about the expenses and the benefits of either renting the apartment or buying the apartment, and the thing that had happened with that. I mean, we discussed that we would get a loan through the group, and then I would be making payments on the loan to pay it back.
You would be making
I would make payments to the loan company
to the group
pay it back.
To pay back the purchase of the
Right.
apartment. You would, not him.
Right.
But you.
And after, I mean, I didn't make any of the decisions with the apartment. I mean, he set up all the rent and everything, and it wasn't until after I had moved that he basically told me that he had bought the apartment, he was making the payments, and I was supposed to pay him for rent, and what else could I say? I mean...
So you were paying your husband rent.
And that seems crazy. I don't know.
It is crazy. There's no other place in the world where this would happen but in the Kingston Polygamy Group. That's the only place things like this would happen. But there's worse. There's more to come. Tell about the apartment that he put you in and made you pay him for.
Yeah. Okay, like when you first come in, then there's some kind of drain hole that I tripped over most every time I went in, and there was some kind of pipe
in the floor.
Just in the floor, and I don't even know what that pipe was for. It came from like where the heater or the furnace and the water heater was, and so.
But it was a danger.
It was very dangerous,
and your children.
And eventually, I think it was ripped out or something. I don't even know what happened with that. And as you come in, then like with the door, there was about an inch gap at the bottom. And
that keeps the heat in the winter, doesn't it?
And so during the winter, then it was freezing cold. We were using the heater more, and it was just hard to keep warm.
Wow.
And even in the living room, then the vent didn't work, and so that was the main room that should have kept warm, but it was kind of pulling from the other rooms, and so it didn't heat very well. Besides that, then a lot of the walls were just really old and peeling, and a lot of damage that it was basically falling apart. One thing that was, I guess, really an exciting time is like the stove was pretty old, and at first then it worked fine, and I had doubts about it because it seemed like it was an old junky stove.
Electric stove, right?
Electric stove. And there would be times that I would be cleaning it, and there was a few times I actually did get shocked by it.
It sparked on you.
It started sparking, and I don't know, I just jumped back, and it just scared me to death. And I really always had to be careful when I was cooking so that I wouldn't get electrocuted, or even my kids.
Yeah, your children, the danger to your children as well. And the toilet leaked, there was mold around the bathtub, your cupboards were falling apart, holes in your sink, rusty old holes in your sink.
And even in the bathroom, then the ceiling right above the shower, then even before I moved in, it was just falling apart, and there were even times when I would shower that water was leaking from upstairs, and I don't know if it was from their shower, the toilet, whatever upstairs, but just...
And he expected you, and you did, pay rent to him to live in this horrible apartment. It was a dangerous place to live, and certainly something that probably should have been condemned too.
Yeah.
And then the amazing thing is that after you decided to leave and your husband was trying to convince you that you should stay, he promised to fix the apartment up if you'd stay, right?
No, the main things that he told me is that the apartment would be fixed up nicer for me, the carpets and the floors would be replaced, and even the cupboards. And
so he was admitting that it was unlivable
pretty much
by admitting that he could fix them up. Did he provide, now we know that he didn't provide housing for you. We know that already, and you had to pay him rent. What about food and clothing for yourself and your children? Did he provide that?
And he didn't at all. With the food, then he expected me to provide the food. There was times that if he decided to pick up something from the grocery store, then he would actually expect me to pay it back. And
He would come to your house for dinner, and you'd buy the grocery. He'd buy the groceries, and you paid him back.
Exactly, and so I feel like he never even that. I mean, I could have done better just getting it myself, because.
Amazing the mindset that would perpetrate this kind of thing. You know, I might mention here this group, the Kingston group, sometimes will claim that they're not a religion, but that they are a cooperative society of businesses who want to live and work with the idea of living the golden rule. Well, I'm here to tell you that none of the people that are treating women like this in that group want to be treated the same way themselves. And I also am here to tell you that I was raised in the Kingston Polygamy Group, and they are a religious institution. They're not just a group of businesses wanting to live the golden rule. And I also need to say at this point that 1 Timothy chapter 5 verse 8 tells us that a person who does not supply the needs and provide for their own households are worse than an infidel. Now, you can't get worse than an infidel, but God says you're worse than an infidel if you don't take care of your own household. So the polygamist families that are being treated so badly, like you've been treated, and there's many others being treated the same way, you're going to have to face God on this one. Believe me, God's not going to put up with it when you face Judgment Day. Tell us about your work. Did you have to work and earn, of course you did, your own living, right?
I was expected to provide the financial side of it. I did have a full-time job, and I was just working crazy hours, and I felt really bad a lot of times because I wanted to spend so much time with my kids, and I wasn't able to because I was expected to keep up on paying rent and...
So you had a full-time day job.
Finances.
You had a full-time day job, right?
I did.
And then you had to also, and this is not something that is rare in the Kingston group, you also had to get up early in the morning and do a newspaper route to supplement your income.
And the thing that happened with the newspaper route is I originally got the newspaper route because I didn't want to have to deal with the nagging about the finances and just any issues there. And so I did get up really early in the morning. I was expected to be there at 3 o'clock every day. Sundays.
3 a.m., right?
3 a.m. And on Sundays, I was expected to be there a little bit, at least an hour earlier, because the papers were bigger and you had to, and it took a little bit more time. And
took more time to prepare
I even
them.
came the day before to prepare the ads for the Sunday papers, and so it was a...
So you were working
job.
up early at 3 o'clock in the morning. You would take your kids either to your grandparents, and sometimes you'd take them with you because they like to help you put them. And so you were sleep deprived.
I was. And it was really hard to just get through. I mean, it was almost like I was just a robot or something, just being there and not really feeling anything.
Yeah. And plus, you were the mother of 3 children, working 2 jobs, sleep deprived, paying every penny, 100% of your own support. He never supported you in any way.
He's never supported me.
In any way. This is not the way God would have any man take care of his family. When you finally were able to get out of there, pardon me, there was one last thing that you had hope for, to maybe undergird you, to help you through the financial problem of getting on your own feet, and that was a tax refund check that you were waiting for.
Right. And usually the thing that happened with the tax return is that they have different people that actually prepare the taxes, and then it's usually the husband that reviews them, make sure they've gotten every last penny that they can possibly get, and then they'll actually sign their spouse's name. So
you never signed a tax return?
There's maybe once or twice that I've ever signed any of my tax returns.
But your tax returns were sent out with your name on them, and you didn't even know what
and
was
I
going on.
I didn't even know the amount. A lot of times they went to a different address, maybe where he worked at, his parents' house, anywhere else except for where I lived, so that I couldn't do anything with them or cash them or do anything about it.
So you didn't get your tax refund check that you were hoping to get.
And even with that, then I had, because I had planned to leave, then I did take more time to make sure that it was coming to my house and that I would have access to it. And when it was expected to come, then I had actually found out that he had changed the address to a post office box that I didn't even have access to, and so I ended up not getting anything. I didn't get any of that at all.
But he took that, and this is what's amazing. I need to bring this out. This refund check was pretty big because it had your earned income credit on it based on a low income that you had with being the provider of 3 children, right?
Right.
And it was made out with your name on it, and he took the check. You never saw it. You never got a penny of it. He deposited it to the general account of the polygamy group's general account, and I guess it must have forged your name.
And I actually did see a copy of the receipt through the IRS, and it wasn't my signature. It was something that he had signed.
Somebody else's signature. Okay. So finally, after, and this is so, folks, this is so immoral. The way that they do this is they got to keep their consecrated money for God. God needs all this money, you know, that they can't give it to the mothers with their children. So finally, after getting your case in court, and you actually got legal custody, you obtained legal custody of your 3 girls, so he didn't have it, and you were able to get out and into a safe housing program so that he would not be able to come and harass you and bother you and the children. And now you're faced with frustrating obstacles about getting a divorce. Let's get into the legal aspect of this, and I want to bring this before our viewers, and that is they are dragging their feet, and you made the remark one time that you think that he's purposely trying to make it impossible for you to divorce him. But you can't get the proper legal representation because you don't have the money. $5,000 in legal fees that you've got racked up, and you can't pay them because you're not working. He hasn't been paying you money until just recently, I think, on child support.
Right.
Would you like to fill in on the details with this?
With him dragging things out, then I feel like, I mean, he has a lot of financial support behind him with the group, and the only financial support I've been getting since about the middle of last year was child support, but that doesn't even come close to even covering the legal fees, and it's just really hard to keep. There was even a time, like during Christmas, just arranging the parent time, that there was so much time spent on that was one of the times that actually drug out a lot of the financial part of it. And I mean, how hard is it for somebody to make some simple decisions like parent time or anything like that?
Yeah, he's just
it seems very intentional to me.
And they even got together and tried to make it so it worked out kind of a way, and I think it was just an intimidating technique for you to pay him alimony, right?
And I don't recall the exacts of it, but somehow in their figures then they had figured that I owed him some, even it was just a small portion, but they figured how I owed him alimony, and that seems crazy, being that he hasn't supported either me or my kids. I mean, he hasn't provided at all, and here he is expecting some sort of return on that.
Right, expecting you to pay him. Rachel's frustrations and her financial disaster and lack of help, financial help or anything else, from those who should be helping her most is typical of many mothers of children who want to get out of polygamous situations. It's one of the frustrations that we face in our ministry all the time, too, when we come across a situation like this, because their husbands and the polygamy group are the ones who hold the purse strings, and they've got a lot of money behind them, believe me, and they make it impossible for women like Rachel to succeed, to actually get out and progress. And this effectually feeds the inequitable polygamous system from which Rachel and others like her are trying to escape. It continues to victimize her and the children, and it keeps her in bondage to a religion and to an illegal marriage that she is trying to escape from. And my question is, what in the world is wrong with our society and our legal system that we tolerate treatment of women and children like this, and the barbaric actions, and it seems like the support of the people who are perpetrating these actions on these women? It's unthinkable. It's unbelievable that this stuff goes on in this society today, and they're trying to make it legal to do this stuff. It just blows my mind. Now, as far as the delaying tactic, your case has been in court now for well over a year,
right,
and yet you've made little, if any, progress. Would you say that this is a delaying tactic that is maybe perpetrated by your husband and his attorneys just to make it miserable for you, so you might give up and come back?
Like I mentioned before, then because of their resources, then they're able to drag things out as long as they want to, and there's no rush for them to get anything done. I mean, they could drag it out forever, and
and it wouldn't hurt them, but
it wouldn't have any effect on them, because they'd still be living the same way they do. They'd be still doing the same things they do, and nothing would really impact that.
But it makes it awfully rough for you. I want you to also tell our viewers, if you will, you've been doing your part to get yourself on your feet, to progress further in this, and to find yourself completely removed from the need of his help. What have you done? Tell us what you've done.
For the last year, then I've actually been going back to school, and it's in massage therapy, and I did recently graduate in December, and right now then I am actually going for my master's to kind of tie things together and make it
and
an even better
I have to congratulate you, Rachel. You've gone forward with courage and with determination that you're going to make a better life for yourself, and that's the kinds of people who make it. I really have to congratulate you. You're doing very, very, very good job, and a good mother too. Now, your husband claims that he doesn't have any money to pay the child support that the court thinks he needs to pay, and yet didn't he recently go on a pretty nice vacation and purchase 2 new or fairly new vehicles?
And I did actually see him in a different car than what he had previously, and also from my kids, and they said that they did have another vehicle, and
so he just doesn't want to. He hasn't wanted to support you from the day you got married to him as a polygamist wife, clear up until now. I mean, it's just
pretty much in name only, and why would I? Or just that the finances don't matter. I mean, that you just have to provide for yourself. That's just what's expected.